Welcome to Socializing Security, where every week we have a discussion about security, compliance, and beyond.
Our goal is to learn and grow by socializing each week's topic with each other, our guests, and with you.
A quick compliance note, this podcast is meant for informational purposes only and should not be considered legal or regulatory advice.
We're glad you've joined us, and we hope you'll learn along with us. And we're back with another episode of Socializing Security. This is yet another RSA coverage episode. We got a lot of great content, so working our way through those with all of you. But this one's special in another way. They're all special kind of in their own unique ways. So Mila, you want to remind everybody who Bharat is?
Yeah, so we were fortunate enough to have Bharat Jogi from Qualys. He is currently the Senior Director of Threat Research. Join us on the RSA recording studio.
On the couch, if you will.
On the couch, yes, with the spotlights. And, this is his second episode with us at Socializing Security. So this is a first for us, too, in the sense that not only was it my first live recording in that particular studio, but also it was a first for us in the fact that we had a repeat guest.
Yeah.
Which means we have friends. We have people that want to come back.
Yeah. We had somebody that was happy enough to talk to us once that they were willing to do it a second time in a much more formal setting.
Yes.
If you will, because
ad hoc in the sense that there was zero preparation for. I'm a little peeved at Brian about this. So I was giving him flack at this at the conference in the sense that Brian had done this the day before with another one of our guests. So he was familiar with, setting the stage. And also with what you do for work, I think you're more used to this type of just whatever, go with the flow. Live public speaking is just what you get paid to do as well. So that is not the case for most people, and definitely not people like me. So I felt suddenly really flustered. But I will say also, just as an endearing tidbit of also, I think we're about to talk about, where we're talking about what it's like to go to a conference and how to prepare for a conference like RSA, is we had such a conference moment, and it was really lovely as, again, this was my first time going to RSA. And, Brian and I were fortunate enough that we were able to go socialize with some individuals, and we were chatting with the vendor, and we were talking at a booth, and all of a sudden, Brian, you look over and what do you see?
Yeah, in a very unusual moment for me, I recognize a face as it flies by, and I'm like, that face looks familiar. And I look down at the badge, and thank God for conference badges, because for people who are difficult with names and faces, I will usually recognize one or the other, but not both at the same time. I was able to look down and see the name before it turned away from me. And I'm like, oh, that's Bharat. I know him. And so I yelled out his name. He turned around, and we got to chatting, trying to have 3 different conversations between the two of us all at the same time.
The best part was too, I think I was looking away chatting with somebody. So all of a sudden I'm in a hug. You know what I mean? I'm suddenly like, oh my God, hi. And then he's like, hello. And I was like, oh my gosh, hi. So I had the name and face live recognition as it was happening, in the sense that, fortunately the odds of that happening are teeny tiny at an event like RSA.
Well, it's one in some tens of thousands of people that are there. But that is the joy of an in-person conference, is you do have those moments. And we had several of those, just walking around a day together, former coworkers of ours, and friends of the pod, who and regular friends, like non pre-podcast friends, if you will. And of course, there are those people that have become friends because of the podcast. It's not that they're one and done. Is that we continue relationships afterwards, which I love a lot. And this is one of those examples of being able to just run into Bharat, and him again having had the experience of being interviewed by us and being, I'd love to do another podcast with you guys. And it's not like we went and did it immediately. So he actually hung out a little bit with us. Didn't have anywhere else to go, apparently, or pushed off whatever was going on. We never
I'm sure he had other things to do. I think he's very busy. I think we honestly caught him at the perfect moment, that maybe he was dragging his feet at whatever, thing he was going to go do. I think we caught him at the perfect moment, and somehow we bamboozled him into joining us on the RSA stage. And it was also, for us, it was the perfect moment because, you and I, we had potentially somebody else lined up and they backed out just because conferences do get really busy. And that's the hard part of trying to schedule somebody for a live episode is we knew that most likely it was going to just be the two of us being like, anyways, how's your experience at RSA?
Yeah.
But having I'm going to say career veteran going to RSA, I think this was his 15th year. And so I think we should really kick off and just bring him on and let him talk about what it's like to be at RSA.
Yeah. Enough talking about how we got there. Let's talk about what we talked about when we talked to him live. So let's bring on Bharat. And we're back. And as we mentioned before, I have brought a couple of people unprepared into a full-on studio for recording a podcast. Those of you who have been watching Socializing Security for a while may recognize our guest today. So Bharat, thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me again.
Yeah.
I feel tricked.
Yes.
Are you a little mad at us? I would be.
No.
I would have been. I'm a little mad at you,
Yeah.
honestly. So I'm okay with it.
But hey, we're here in person. And so this is part of the experience. So so we've talked to you before, Bharat, talking about vulnerabilities and that threat research space. Given that we're here in person, let's maybe talk a little bit about your experience here, because you've been here for a while.
Yeah.
You've been coming to RSA for how many years now?
This is my 15th RSA.
15th RSA.
Yeah.
Yes.
So cool.
Yeah.
So I first came to RSA in 2010. At that time, the RSA conference was not as big. Like now
How
we
big
have
was it?
I think we only had like a smaller section of what we see currently. Like there's this south side, north side. I remember back in 2010, it was just like one section. Now there is like so many different sections.
City shut down, basically. We're in San Francisco.
Yeah.
And like I booked this trip last minute. That was a mistake. I'm not saying anywhere near this because it's
you won't
so
find anything.
expensive.
Yeah.
And this is my first RSA. So I'm on the opposite spectrum of you where I'm going to say the veteran here.
Yeah.
I'm the newbie. This is my first time. I feel like a deer in the headlights, literally, because there's also spotlights on us right now.
Yeah.
But the whole city's shut down.
Yes. A lot of people, companies from across the globe come here to showcase their products. It's really, really interesting conference. Like I remember back when 2010, it was very small, very few companies, only big names. But it's very interesting to see, like right now in 2025, we see booths from across the globe. There's a section from companies in the Netherlands, Korea. Like it's really fantastic to see, like all the companies, all the vendors across the globe coming here, showcasing their products. It's also a great place to, socialize. Like just how
people accidentally and then they get you to join a podcast.
So, yes, and very interesting to see, how RSA has transformed over the years.
Yeah. So I've been going to VMware's conference is a vendor I've been using since I was on the customer side. So I've been going to their conference for about as long. And so for me, the experience has changed a lot over the years as my role has changed, my day-to-day job has changed, my position in the community and the people that I know that are going to be there. So I'm curious from your perspective, kind of how maybe that has morphed. Like, how has your experience, how has what you aim to do at RSA changed over that time?
Yeah. So, as I said, RSA is the conference where, global companies come here to showcase their, greatest and tech that is there. So if you are in cybersecurity, I would definitely recommend coming to this conference, especially visit the expo section. Expo section is where, these companies demo their products. I get to learn a lot from this. My aim is to, somehow, like few influencer in the industry, like you have the greatest people in cybersecurity, vulnerabilities research, compliance, privacy research. They come over here, showcase their products. It's really amazing. My goal is to, meet at least 3 or 4 people in the industry who I really admire, get in somehow connect with them, talk to them. That is where I feel, that is the value of this conference brings in. It's really, you see and all the demos that you see, fantastic. Like, I really enjoy being at RSA.
Yeah.
I love hearing that because it's so this is my first time at RSA, but not my first conference by any means. And if I talk to specifically, if I'm talking to, you know, younger individuals within their career, especially if they're also like pivoting in their career and they're like, hey, which conferences should I go to? How should I approach it? My personal ethos is always, I have a goal that if I've had 3 valuable conversations in one day, I was successful. Anything on top of those 3 conversations was just extra on top, and I'm just extra lucky. So I hit that within the first like 20 minutes of rocking up. I'm Dutch by background, and I showed up to the Netherlands contingency and was like, oh, and like switched to Dutch right away and was like really excited to meet a couple of different vendors within at the global section. But for me, that's always been my thing of advice of, especially if we're talking to like a younger audience, specifically in their career, not necessarily an age of just talking about like, hey, this is my first time at RSA. This is my goal, right? One, I take a ton of notes on my phone. I don't love doing it because I'll be talking to you right away and I'm looking at my phone, and it's very much because you've suddenly told me, oh, XYZ person is so interesting at this booth. And then I'm like, I'm gonna forget that in 20 seconds. So let me write it down really quick. And so I have like an Apple Note basically on my iPhone that is just like a bunch of gobbledygook that at the end also turns into, this is my roadmap for how I do follow-ups with the people that I actually connected with, socialized with, and met. And I don't know, what is your perspective on that? With you have a different flavor. Obviously, we're here as like attendees. We're here for fun. He's here for work. So.
I mean, my schedule becomes difficult, so it's harder to do those types of focuses. I've been to conferences where I am just an attendee, and that's similar to the way I do it. Again, back to my experience with VMware's conference, it started off, I need to learn as much as I can about the core product. I would go to a lot of sessions and whatnot, and every year became less and less about that and more about meeting people, connecting with people from previous years, and just kind of understanding the ecosystem of the whole thing. And so for my goal, I don't have to work the entire time. There have been years when I would have to work the entire time, but this year is not one of those. Being able, obviously, being able to, spend that time and make the goals of the day job really go well. And I've had good satisfaction in that with just one day of booth duty, but then being able to spend like the afternoon running around with other people. So today I'm running around with you, running into cool people. And we've run into like 3 or 4 people already that have been awesome, or old friends. And so being able to make those connections, makes this so much more real. I learned so much more just sometimes going booth to booth with somebody that's asking different questions. Is a great way to go about it as well.
This is a tip too, of bring a buddy.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, you are one of our buddies. So, and again, Bharat, I love that we were like, do you want to come chat with us? Sure, of course. Like, but I'm lucky. A friend of mine is here. And so he socialized with us this morning. And then he's kind of been my buddy of like, hey, I'm grabbing lunch. You want to get lunch? And I'm like, oh, thank God. Yes. Like, where are we doing that? And she's from here. So even better. Like, I had the best tacos I've ever had today, but like the best kind of.
Wait, are you from Texas?
Yeah. It was a seared ahi tuna. So I'm going to say the fish is better here than where I live.
Well, that's fair.
I'm in Austin. So there's not like, there's the lake, but, I will say having a friend with you, even if you don't do similar stuff and you also have your own agenda, I think is also, I've had the most fun at conferences when I've had a couple friends like Brian or one of my auditors. She and I love to go to conferences together. And then we're like a dynamic duo, because then I'm like, oh, she is the coolest person I work with. And they're like, how do you work together? And then they're like, oh, well, we're like, and then suddenly we're naturally introducing one another. We don't even work together. And it becomes kind of, we're the champion for one another. So do you bring a buddy? Do you go by yourself? What's
I generally have, like some of members of my teams, some of my colleagues, we are at the conference, and the best part about it is, like at a conference like RSA, you will get to meet up and close with all the industry veterans that are there. I just met a industry veteran who has been doing like incident response, penetration testing for last 20 plus years. I just met with him. Absolutely, and it is really helpful. We talk to them.
That was your goal today, right?
That was my
came in kind of with a goal about being like, I want to meet this superstar. I want to meet them in person.
And the best part about it is, so you obviously have your goals. I wanted to meet a few people, and I have been in this industry for last 16 plus years. But you'll always be surprised by when you come here, all the energy and the research that some companies are doing. You, even though you are in this industry for so long, you will be surprised by the amount of innovative ideas, etc. Especially many of the startups are doing and showcasing their product. It's
Yeah, you should be like an influencer for ours. I bought in. I'm like, I'm coming back. But just, yeah, the way that you
Yeah.
said it, of just being like, there's genuine connection. You're meeting with some people that you actually see as like mentors, and also like,
Yeah.
you're like, wow, that person is so cool. I want to meet them in person. I want to shake their hand.
Yeah.
I want to get to socialize with them
Yeah.
on the expo floor, or, maybe even get lunch, whatever it is.
Yeah.
I think that's the right attitude to have it. I'm
Yes.
curious, when you started going to RSA,
Yeah.
did you go to more of the content and the talks? Or was it
Yeah.
always kind of, I'm coming here to look at potential vendors that I want to bring on, for your organization?
Yeah. So my goal, being from a research background, I was, especially for RSA conference, I do like many conferences like Black Hats and DEF CON and so on and so forth. Specifically for RSA conference in San Francisco, my goal is to be more on the expo floor. This is where, as I mentioned, companies demo their latest and greatest products, right? And I really want to get a perspective on where the industry is heading, right? I remember back in 2010, many companies were, trying to ship some networking device, trying to block some firewalls, etc. In 2025, I think the industry have come far too along in this time. It's a lot of about AI. You see I saw many great demos on the defending organizations' applications via this agentic um, uh, uh,
AI.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting to see what RSA has become for all this.
This is actually the first time today I've heard the word AI. So I have to say, I'm actually like super
aren't
excited
you
about that, because like I actually was just talking to vendors about what they do, and kind of dealing more with the human element of it, as opposed to focusing as much on the software that they're selling, or and that's again because I'm here to just like meet friends, basically, and just like have fun. So it's interesting that you just said AI, because I was like, actually, I haven't really talked to anybody about artificial intelligence today, and I'm actually grateful that that's happened.
Yes.
I'm sure this afternoon that'll be different. You're absolutely right. There are a lot of AI leaders. I'm really excited to go to the smaller organizations too. I know that there's like a startup specific area, and I want to make sure that I'm reaching out to them too, and learning like what is currently on their mind. Because like that's where my specialty is, right? So for me, I want to hear like what are their concerns, and so it's cool to hear from for the research perspective. I'm also curious if you're looking at being like, ooh, we need to think about this for our team of like what we're testing.
Yeah. So you definitely get a lot of ideas, right? When you talk to all the vendors, you definitely get a lot of ideas, in the sense that you think you have figured out everything, you know what is there in your organizations and protected, and then you visit this booths and some vendor will showcase something and you'll be like, aha, this is something that, really, this is a blind spot. Yeah, it's a blind spot. And that is why, I love coming to RSA conference.
Yeah, I mean, I've in my day job, working in the booth, I've had several conversations just about partnerships.
Yes.
Companies that come up and like, hey, we're interested in what you're doing. I think we're kind of in the same space, but not really competitors. Like, and that's one of the things I love about my job is we do partner with a lot of other companies in cybersecurity, because cybersecurity is dozens and dozens and dozens of different subspecialties. And so being able to make those connections and try to help information flow between those, because there's so many just natural connections. DSPM and DLP, for example, like knowing the sensitivity of the data and helping to protect it from getting out of the door is a huge potential partnership. And so being able to make those types of connections and learn from one another in that regard to be able to do better for everybody, because ultimately everybody here wants to help customers be more secure.
Yes.
I don't think I've ever run into anybody that's like, I'm just here to knock you off your podium. I'm here to help our customers do better. And some of us feel like we do it better than others, but when it comes down to it, helping each other do better to make customers safer is really the goal. And I love that about this community here.
DSPM, is that what you said? Data loss prevention is DLP. We name dropped that one earlier. So I think our listeners are familiar with that one, but what is DS? Yeah.
Data Security Posture Management.
Yes.
Data Security Posture Management. That's a new acronym for me.
Wow. Keeping me on the fly.
So
So that's the concept of understanding how at risk your data is, the
Yeah.
riskiness of your data, and helping to be able to identify what you can do to make your data less risky. So, if it's got way too many permissions and somebody were to compromise a low-level permission, somebody should have small permissions but has access to sensitive data, DSPM is the buzzword to help understand that that's the space that you work in.
I love it. So when we're thinking about for next year, are you bought in? Are you coming again next year?
Yeah,
Okay,
100%.
cool.
Yeah.
Me too. So we can hang out more formally the next
Yeah.
time too. What are your tips for somebody who's never been to RSA before? Because I asked this actually to LinkedIn. So I posted this about a week ago and was like, hey, I'm going to RSA for the first time. What are your tips? And it was funny because not a lot of people engaged on the post itself, but I got a lot of like DMs being like,
Yes.
which I don't know why they were like embarrassed to be like, wear sneakers, but like they seem to be. And so I asked being like, hey, to my like community, my network on LinkedIn, being like, hey, what should I do? Who should I think? And very much they were like, good walking shoes, which to be
Yes.
fair, I think that's for any conference.
Yes.
That's just like good advice. Like
Yes.
I have a fall risk. So I trip really easily. The last conference we were at, I face planted really, really hard I tripped over a forklift. So
wow.
it happens to me anywhere I go. But so good walking shoes.
Hydrate.
Hydrate.
Yes.
Don't forget your water bottle.
Yeah, one of your colleagues forgot her water bottle, and that seemed like a pain point for her. She seems, I don't know why that is. Like, why is there not enough water? Like, why haven't vendors decided to just have water at these conferences?
I have seen that booths at other conferences in the past.
Yeah. To be fair, there were
Hydration
vendors giving out free beverages outside, and they were like, we have free drinks. And I was like, it's Gatorade. I'm excited.
Yeah.
Like, okay, hydrate, good walking shoes. I also think to not plan too much, of be able to be spontaneous.
Yes. Yeah. So obviously you should have
to bring you into a podcast.
So I'd say definitely, it's obviously a good idea to plan or do some research, especially if you have some, like the mentors you want to meet, you want to see some products, some vendor products. But yeah, don't plan too much that, have room. As I said, you will pleasantly be surprised by, things that you don't know. Don't be afraid to, go to a booth, talk to the booth staff. Most of them are very helpful. They'll walk you through their products. And yeah, I think just don't plan too much.
Yeah.
One that I think is a great one is be memorable.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I wear glitter, right? That's like my thing. Or like I have stickers or whatever. Like I purposely, like I used to have this mindset when I would go to a conference or something that I would usually seek out the person that was like wearing the most interesting thing or like seemed really memorable. And I would just go introduce myself to them because I was like, oh, if they're bold or brave enough to wear that kind of outfit or whatever, like I was like, that's usually somebody I want to go talk to. And so I've taken that as my own mindset about being like, wow, I should be the brave person that's like wearing face glitter so that somebody's like, oh, wow, cool. Like, and so that's one that I also think as we're sitting here, I just saw somebody with a sequin, like jacket, and I've seen like light up shoes. And again, it doesn't have to be face glitter. It can be whatever, but I think it's coming up with something that's memorable. I also think good tip for vendors, if, they're exhibiting here of like, be memorable. I know we went to another conference and I'm still thinking about everybody was wearing pink shirts and it was like stood out. And like the whole conference, everybody was just wearing pink shirts the whole day and like for a week, and you recognize their brand. And so I would also just say like, be memorable.
Yeah. The swags that companies give away, they do try to do that. That's how they remember.
A little bit. Some of it has been the same. So I was excited to see some new ideas and of just like having fun with certain different things I think this is definitely a conference where people can be more fun.
Yeah.
There's a lot of fun that happens.
After parties.
The after parties.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of events around the conference itself.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a lot of interesting things that happen as the community grows around a conference.
Yes.
So that can be very dependent on the different conferences and the people that go there and kind of the community that gets built around that. One thing with RSA is like almost every restaurant within a 2-block radius has been bought out for the week.
Yes.
Which is kind of crazy. So there's plenty of places to hang out if you know the right companies.
So you can find the cool tacos that I had and walk a little bit. But Bharat, thank you so much for just like being willing to just, of course, socialize with us and us trapping you or into this.
Thank you.
For what it's worth, I think you're our first repeat guest, so you got that.
Great.
I'm also not surprised that happened because I also check out the other episode. My gosh, what you do for work is so freaking cool.
Yeah.
So how can people reach out to you? Is LinkedIn still the best way?
Yeah, LinkedIn is still the best way. I'm on X and LinkedIn. Yeah, that's the only two social platforms.
All right. Well, everybody look up Bharat. You can also look him up on our website.
Yep.
On socializingsecurity.com, and we will make sure to properly see you next year at RSA.
This was good. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Brian and Milu. It's always a pleasure talking to you guys.
Yeah. Thanks for socializing
Thank you
with us.
very much.
So yet another great conversation, and I could say with Bharat again, because again, that was the second time we have talked to him on the podcast. So I love those insights. I would start reflecting on that by saying, and I think I may have said this to, if I didn't say it on the podcast, on the recording, I definitely said it to the two of you afterwards, which is all that applies to really any conference. I think you actually commented to me, you talked about VMworld more than you talked about RSA. And that's because the lessons are fairly universal, especially Beans. I went to that conference 15 times and counting still, and he's been to RSA 15 times. Like those experiences continue to repeat and really do apply no matter what conference you're at, whether it's your first time or your 15th time.
Yeah, I think what was so lovely about Bharat's approach of going to a conference, especially one that he's familiar, right? As much as like, I'm sure it's pretty much, I think the last couple of years, it's very much kind of probably similar players and the content is different. Of course, cybersecurity, the technology is evolving rapidly. And I know we talked about that, but I think for the most part, his mindset was very much similar to mine, which was excited to hear too, as like, this was my first RSA where he was like, like, I have two things that I really wanted to do today, and the rest is just icing on top. And, he had a very specific person that he wanted to meet, and, he got to do that, and he was so excited. I know he was telling us before and after that of just being like, oh, like he was, kind of he was a fan, and that was so cool.
Mm-hmm.
And also, because like I'm a fan of Bharat, so he's really cool, and I was glad we got to chat with him. But it's also just really great to hear an individual being excited about meeting so-and-so in person at this event and being like, hey, that's my main goal today. And, the rest is just great. And that I think is why we were able to just trick him into being like, hey, Bharat, do you have a couple minutes? We'd love to chat. And he's like, sure, because I'm sure he was busy. I don't think he had jam-packed his schedule, which I do think is something that for me is always a takeaway with conferences. The first couple I went within my career, it was very much, I was like, oh my God, I want to do everything and see everything. And like, I want to go to everything. And it was way too much. And I did not do that for RSA. I was very specific. I had a couple meetings, and then my focus was socializing security and just getting to meet with people. And I think that was, for me, it was a highlight of just also getting to socialize with people like Bharat, go to that main stage and see what that was like. That was scary for me. So I think that felt like no big deal for you, but I was very intimidated.
Yeah, I mean, I've been in formal studios like that before. I've interviewed executives in a setting like that. So yeah, not freaking me out by any means whatsoever. But yeah, I definitely agree with the advice of like, you need to focus on the fact you're in person. And that's one thing that does kind of drive me nuts sometimes is when I'm trying to, when I've got that one person, like you're one of the three people I want to connect with at this in-person conference. And I usually will do that. There's usually 3 to 6 people that I'm going to focus on, and I will push things aside to go meet up with them. Whether that's have a meal, whether that's have a drink, whether that's walk around the expo hall with them. At any conference I go to, I try to focus on that. And they're usually people that I would only see at a conference like that. So you got to roll with the punches on things like that. But you also need to prioritize pretty heavily, and that can be tough. This year with RSA is similar to many conferences I've been to where I don't wear just one hat. I've got multiple hats. So I've got booth duty I've got to do for part of the day. And then like the day that you were there, I focused on hanging out with you, from breakfast all the way past dinner. we hung out as much as we could.
Somehow we
Because
ended up at a club, and I'm shocked by that experience too, but in the sense that it was also a networking event where that was where we ended up. We just both were like, sure, yeah, we could go there. We can make that, because we were prioritizing seeing another person that was one of the friends of the podcast. And you and I love it. Didn't do any research, walked up and we're like, wow, okay, this is like a concert venue.
Yeah.
Which was fun.
I'm here physically in person. And while I love a live band, it's not one of my favorite bands. And it's a band that I could probably catch some other time if I really wanted to. There's very few times, like, I go to Vegas for all of these shows. Like, there's so many shows I've been to Vegas for. I'm not a gambler, so I'm not looking to go hang out in around a table. I have, because I've been with people that I prioritize. And there was one year I was there with my boss, and I wanted to hang out with him, and he wanted to go play craps. So I stood at the craps table and watched him play craps for an hour or so. But going to see a show in Vegas is literally something I've never done, because I'm going to go sit in a dark hall and not be able to talk to people. That doesn't seem like it's a priority for me at those types of things. I've gone to a few shows over the years at conferences, usually because they're part of the experience, part of the event, or that's where the people I wanted to see were going. So yeah, I'll go see that show. But I've never actually done that in Vegas, which is an ironic little tidbit for me.
I love this. I also think in terms of like recommendations for, again, I'm not even thinking like cybersecurity conferences. I think any conference. I think what the takeaways that Bharat was sharing of his tips and tricks for getting ready for a conference, where I think those are applicable, honestly, industry wide.
Yep.
What I took away too was something that I really did and prioritized was, I'm a small business owner. I work for myself. So if I'm suddenly out for a day, it impacts my clients. And so, that is a different type of mindset about being like, oh, I'm here for work. It's like, yeah, I'm here for work. Also, though, I'm not doing other work.
Yeah.
And what I think was really helpful was I set that expectation with my clients in terms of being like, hey, like I will be unavailable at this time. I will fill it in. And, I was tippy tapping away on the plane with, the crappy Wi-Fi, whatever we made it work. But it was one of the things that I would also recommend for individuals, especially if you are going to a conference for your job, but you still have a lot of responsibilities, or you don't have the flexibility to be able to take like, hey, this is a work day that I'm really just doing this and I'm not doing anything else. Set that expectation with your team members, with your clients, with family, friends, whatever it is, because you will be less available, because you should be prioritizing the in-person engagement that you're getting while you're there. That's part of the reason you're paying for the conference pass. That's why you've committed the time. Block it off and give that to yourself so that you can end up at a random like concert venue where Brian didn't get to see the band. And like that's a funny story. And I also think it's like, yeah, good, because you and I were both very much prioritizing being like, hey, these are a couple people we want to see. If these people are going to be at the concert hall, sure, we'll also do that, and we'll do that thing. And we were able to go with the flow because we weren't like, oh shoot, I have 8 other things that I have to do, and and I set that as a boundary with myself. I wasn't able to go for the whole conference this time. I'm hopeful that's different next year. I hope that I can, build some extra space and time in my calendar so that I can be there for longer, because I did feel like I missed out because I was only there for like one action-filled day. But man, I had a great day.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's a big part of it for me, is like I've had those conference weeks where it was wall-to-wall meetings, and it was just bouncing from venue to venue to meet with people. And it made it really hard to do the impromptu pieces that to me is really the joy of a conference. So yeah, make sure you're using the time wisely. It's part of my job to be there, so the expectation is that I will be unavailable for a lot of that week. Some of my coworkers were really grateful for 3/5 of my immediate team being at the conference, because it was really quiet for them and they were able to get a lot of heads down work done. And then having a lot of even some of the other people that they work with throughout the broader team being unavailable. So take advantage of when people are out of the office, and it takes some preparation. You got to prepare to be impromptu is maybe the best way to summarize it. Especially when you've been to these things for a long time, like Bharat has at RSA, because it can be difficult to get around, because you're walking down the aisle thinking,
You
oh,
get
I'm just
pulled
going to
aside
ignore.
by the two of
Yep.
us.
Yeah, you get pulled aside and commit to doing a podcast, and it eats up an hour and a half of your day. But you've got to prepare in order to have that, which means you've got to be thoughtful about it. You've got to let your team know, hey, I'm not going to be available, or I will be I'll be available in spurts. So like when we were standing around talking, finishing the other conversations, he was tip-tapping on his phone, probably trying to close up conversations he was in the middle of, and saying, hey, I'm going to be unavailable here for the next hour or so. So let's close up this conversation. So being able, and when, like for me, I was working a booth, and one of the things that we always have to be conscious of is, try to minimize conversations amongst ourselves, because we're there to talk to other people that are going by. But a part of that is also being aware of the fact that like you may have to drop a conversation on a moment's notice and move on to a different conversation, depending on what you're needed for and what your skill sets are available for. So conferences can be tough. And it definitely takes some experience and some practice and some planning around that to make the most of them. But I'm not a huge people person. Most people don't get this about me. I'm very much an introvert, but I love going to conferences because of these things. It's really the only way to have them.
Yeah. Well, I will close this out with just saying thank you so much, Bharat. This was a big moment for us for Socializing Security, because this was really where I'm realizing as one of the co-hosts, and we've built this thing that like, we have friends. It's truly when we're like, oh, thank you so much for socializing us. We hope you're a friend of the podcast. No, like Bharat became a friend, and I know you were introduced to Bharat through another mutual contact, and so there was some relationship there. The only interaction I've had with that lovely human being is our recording on the podcast. And so I was so grateful that translated into the start of a wonderful friendship. I hope we see him again. Maybe, we'll keep tagging him for different things at conferences. But also like he's there every year now, I know, and he will be one of the people that I prioritize next year of, hopefully he's there again. And I'll be like, hey, Bharat, do you have a minute to get a coffee? And maybe it won't be with spotlights and a microphone and recorded, just because I also just am excited to just get to know what he's working on and, what he's doing at his job and what he's thinking through. And it was just exciting to get to connect with him. I was grateful that we actually had some downtime before we started recording, because I felt like I got to just like check in with him and just like chat.
Yeah, that was fantastic. So really appreciate you doing that, Bharat, and look forward to more conversations. Probably with some of you that are listening right now, we'd be happy to include you in that friendship group too. So definitely let us know if you've got a fun topic you would like to discuss with us. Even if you don't think it's necessarily fun, we might find it fun. So feel free to bring it up to us. info@socializingsecurity.com.
Thanks for socializing with us.
Take care, everybody. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Socializing Security. We hope you learned a thing or two with us.
If you'd like to continue socializing with us on this topic or have feedback, we'd love to hear from you on LinkedIn or social media. Just search for Socializing Security. Or you can email us at info@socializingsecurity.com.
Until next time, stay social and stay secure.